Home for the Aggies, AM 1400 and 103.5 FM, The Light.
The Make It Ford Summer Sales Event is on, so make it your best summer ever with Ford. Now's the best time to get our best deals on a great selection of Ford trucks and SUVs, like the Ford Explorer, the Ford Bronco family, Ford F-Series, and the all-electric F-150 Lightning. These are the deals you've been waiting for, so don't wait. It's the Make It Ford Summer Sales Event, so make it yours. Make it now at your Ford dealer today.
You are listening to North Carolina A&T football on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
It's the Blue and Gold postgame show here on the Aggie Sports Network with Al Swann and Billy Covington. Donal Ware with you. A&T falling in its first CAA contest of the season to Delaware, 42-13. This was an A&T team that played extremely well in the first half. As a matter of fact, it was only an 18-10 halftime lead for Delaware, with A&T getting possession. Then it fell apart in the third quarter. As a matter of fact, A&T had a couple of turnovers there in the second half. And Delaware, behind the play, of course, of Ryan O'Connor, the quarterback who threw for 325 yards today, just too much for A&T.
And Donal, the irony of this is that A&T really plays hard. You look at the score, and of course we see what the score is, but they never give up. They really play hard. But in today's game, you just can't be one-dimensional. I mean, you have got to be able to put some points on the board. And we saw what happened, as you said, the third quarter. The game was close at halftime. We thought we had some momentum on our side coming into the third quarter. And, of course, that first possession was not what we anticipated or wanted. And it just sort of snowballed from there. And, of course, Delaware with Ryan O'Connor, who is just a big-time quarterback, they were just able to score from anywhere on the field, and he made timely throws. And, of course, we had difficulty running the ball, and when you're one-dimensional, it really makes it very, very difficult. But, again, the Aggies, they really play hard, but got to score some points in today's game if you're going to win.
Steve says, tough loss. The makings are there. Aggie pride. Champ D 1012 says second half was tough, which it really was. And I mean, Billy, you look at this Delaware team, we knew it was going to be a tough game. I mean, Delaware rolled up 526 yards of total offense.
Donald, when you give up 526 yards of total offense, your chances of winning is slim and none. You got to have an outstanding offense to combat that, and we just didn't have that today. But you have to give Delaware a lot of credit. They came in with a game plan. One thing we kind of overlooked, as you indicated in the pregame, they had, 16 days off to prepare for this game. I don't know if they got film from Wake Forest or not, but surely they got film from Winston-Salem State. And they, had a game plan that they stuck to and saw what A&T was able to do against those two teams and make yourself a game plan. And they came in and executed extremely well today against the Aggies.
ODB says we need better productivity from our D-line. There has been little to no improvement compared to last year. And you look at these numbers, because at one time A&T was getting a bit of a pass rush, more of a pass rush. Well, at least from I think that's a fair assessment. From a pass rush standpoint, we saw A&T give more of a pass rush today than we saw it give in the previous two games.
Exactly. And one of the things that they did, keep in mind, Delaware averaged about 325 up front. And that second quarter, we started to change our pass rush a little bit. By that, I mean, we were doing just straight man-on-man blocking, just bull rushes. We started to use our speed. When I say we, A&T's defensive linemen, getting in the gaps, getting up the field. And they did, for a period of time, get some pressure on Ryan O'Connor. But, I mean, he's just tough. He can throw the ball from different angles. And he just makes the plays when they need to be made, and it just makes for a tough day.
31 carries, 74 yards is all A&T could muster up. And obviously not having Kenji Christian, because A&T really had its way in the run game against Wake Forest, against Winston-Salem State. No Kenji Christian in this game. You only get 74 yards on 31 carries.
I mean, for example, last week against Winston, we had the ball. We had 80 possessions last week against Winston. And this week against the Blue Hens of Delaware, we had only 66. Conversely, on the other side, the Blue Hens had 80. They had 80 possessions, as you said, Donal, for 526 yards of total offense. And when you facing an assault like that, if you're one-dimensional again in today's game, it is really, really difficult, very, very hard to win.
And, Billy, look, Billy, you look at this Delaware team in terms of rushing the football. Marcus Yarns, you mentioned him possibly being a first-round pick, the running back.
Right.
Didn't even play from the first quarter, or from really second, third, or fourth quarter, didn't even play yet. You're talking about a running game that still mustered 201 yards.
And a lot of that came from the quarterback. He had an outstanding, not only did he throw the ball effectively, he was also able to run and make some positive yards running the football. Silver did a great job in the place of Yarns. And in fact, but you have to give it all to the offensive line. I looked at those guys when they came out for their pre-game warm-ups, and they are huge. They are huge. And I'm saying this, they're not old, but they've been here 5 years. And that makes a big difference when you're playing a very young team such as North Carolina A&T. But we'll come back from this. We played well. We never gave up, but it was just a bad day for the Aggies in the second half. And we did not score a point in the second half, not even a field goal. And that may have been the difference in the game.
Janelle says, shaking my head, some foolishness from sane foolishness from last season. No offense. We got to do better. 13 points, granted, but we saw some flashes. Particularly, it seemed like Kevin White is continuing to get better. Now he's just out. Seems like he got to be able to hit that deep ball now.
I agree, Donal, and from an offensive standpoint, we are light years ahead of where we were last year. If Aggie fans remember, it took us after 7 games to get a 100-yard passing game last year. And, of course, this year, Kevin White has really played well, and I anticipate that he's only going to get better. But we just couldn't run the ball today. And, of course, Delaware played that really, I won't call it funky defense, but it's something we don't usually see, with just 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and the rest in the secondary, and they can use them in pass or run support. And we just were not able to run the football. And when you're not able to run the football, you're going to turn the ball over to the other team. And when you have a team like Delaware, as we said, who put up 526 yards of total offense, it's going to make for a tough day.
You can type your comments in the chat, and we'll get to you. Earthel says, not having Christian put us behind the 8 ball with the running game. Most definitely. Let me ask, and I'll start with Billy. I want to ask you all, and I get it. Delaware's got a really, really good football team. In certainly today, because of the transition now to FBS, you're talking about having more scholarships, all of those kinds of things. It's not to take anything away from Delaware, but there was a point in the game where A&T was getting ready to get off of the field late in the second quarter, and Karan Prunty's one of the best cover corners, he's one of the best complete cornerbacks in all of the country, gets that pass interference call when he was step for step with the guy, look back. It was not only a late flag, it just wasn't the right call. That could have been a turning point in a lot of respects in this football game.
Absolutely. And, and of course, the 3 of us were sitting here looking at that play, and it looked like a great defensive play by Prunty on there, but the official threw the flag, and the play will stand, and that's just a momentum breaker. And we had just had too many of those in the football game, and I keep harping on the second half kickoff when we thought the ball was going out of bounds, and it did not, so we had to pick it up, and we started from the 8, We punted, they came up and scored. So, your first 4 or 5 plays or 4 or 5 downs in the second quarter, second half, gives you an idea of what you need to do for the rest of the game. And we just didn't do well coming out of the dressing room for quarter number 3. And of course, good teams will take advantage of that, and Delaware did.
Earthel says, look at the turnovers in the second half, 3 turnovers, and Delaware scores 21 points off of those turnovers. Janelle says we have to get back to running the ball. We actually have decent running backs. And then Pierre says, I still believe in this team, Aggie pride. And look, you've got North Carolina Central on the horizon. And this is it's a good team. It's a well-coached team. We're very familiar with Trey Oliver. He's done some really, really good things at North Carolina Central. But this isn't – and remember, that's a close ball game last year. A&T was right there.
Right.
But this isn't the same Central team last year, but it looks like an improved A&T team, and it's a rivalry game. So A&T has a real opportunity against the Eagles next week.
I agree, Donal. It's going to be a tough game because it's going to be in Durham. And, of course, it is a rivalry game, but I really expect A&T to bounce back against Central next week. And even after that, we got to go to South Carolina State, and the Bulldogs are really tough this year. So we have 2 non-conference games in a row, and they're both going to be really tough. And so, but I expect us to bounce back and play better against Central next week in Durham.
Amos says, my first game of the season, and we're playing uninspired football. Something is missing. This game must be played with aggression, and the team doesn't have it. Thoughts?
Well, again, I can say that the Aggies really play hard. Of course, we know what the score is, and but momentum means so much in this game. And, of course, we went in at halftime. We were only down by 8 points, and we were going to get the ball the first possession of the third quarter. And that possession really didn't turn out the way we had hoped coming out of halftime. And it can really have a big-time effect on a team when you have these expectations coming out at halftime and then things don't really go your way for whatever reason. And it can really have an impact. But in terms of A&T's playing hard, I have no problem whatsoever with how hard they play. I mean, they play hard for 4 quarters, and but it's just so tough now in especially college football. If you can't generate some kind of offense, it is really, really difficult to win.
Amos said, I need to see KJ fired up after a first down. Everyone is complacent, and I can't lie, our linebackers are slow. Tom says we miss Christian. Lack of a running game makes a difference.
It does.
So no doubt about that. On today, we got the next 2 games. He had a little bit of home cooking, 1-1 at home, and so you got a tough old MEAC games, if you will,
right?
With North Carolina Central and certainly with South Carolina State. And so we'll see. Of course, this team will go back to the drawing board this week and, prepare for those Eagles in Durham.
I go back to what, Coach Broadway used to say about the Aggie-Eagle matchup. He always said he thought it was more important to the Eagles than it was to, A&T, in terms of the rivalry. And but it's going to be tough down at Durham next week. Central has a really good team. And not getting too far ahead, but when we go down to Orangeburg, South Carolina State is really tough this year. So we got 2 back-to-back tough games against old MEAC opponents, and maybe we can, get well off those, and let's hope so anyway.
Paulie says it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're probably 2 years away from being competitive, and the majority of the teams we play have budgets that are and have always been much larger than ours. John says better team than last year. They just got to keep fighting in the second half of these games. It's definitely, especially from the offensive perspective, in the play calling. We're seeing, more so you could have questioned some of the play calls last year. Not as much this year. Maybe it's more lack of execution, but it's just a much different and a much better offense this year with a lot of the same personnel.
Yeah, it's night and day in terms of difference offensively. The way we attack, the way we use the field, the way we use our receivers. It's a totally different scheme than we had last year. And I believe in Kevin White. I think Kevin White is going to be an excellent player. He's progressing. He's going to have to get a little bigger. They have him listed at 180. And I don't think he weighs 180 pounds. And boy, when you're running that spread option and when you're running those RPOs, some of those linebackers, boy, I tell you, they can really bring some smoke. So, but other than that, I really believe in Kevin White, and I think that the team, big difference than this year than last, and I can only hope that it's going to get better, Donal.
No doubt. We're going to get ready to wrap it up as, of course, we get you set for next week's game against North Carolina Central, and that game is in Durham. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff, and we're coming on with the pregame show beginning at 6:30. Billy, any last words?
No, Joe. I think we've covered everything. Tough loss for the Aggies, and we must realize that this is only the third game of the season. We got 9 more games remaining, and I just think we're going to do well if we can stay sort of injury-free. Those 9 games will tell the story, but I think we're going to be okay. We're going to play hard each and every game, each and every play. And I have confidence in the Aggies that they are going to do better next week than they did this week, and hopefully, come in and play well against North Carolina Central. Speaking of games, of Charleston, Richmond has really beaten Charleston pretty bad. The game is not over. It's late in the fourth quarter, and they lead Charleston Southern 35-0. Holy Cross is leading 35-22 to Bryant. So it's going to be the CAA is going to be up for grabs. We're getting into conference play, so everybody needs to play well now.
Al?
Yeah, because you look at that, we got to go to Richmond this year to play him up there. We got to go to Towson, and you gave us some score on the Towson game. So, I mean, that CAA schedule is going to be really, really tough. But I think really one of the things that the Aggies showed today is that with just a little improvement and some progression and some growth, we can be competitive in the CAA. So maybe not this year, but I think with some of the players we got, especially Kevin White and some of those receivers, it's going to be there. It's going to get there.
Paulette says much improved. Give defense some credit. We're going to give Earthel the last word. She says, I will see you in Durham next week. And we certainly will see you in Durham on next week. The Aggies with another opportunity going to face off against rival North Carolina Central. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff in Durham, and we're coming on with the pregame show beginning at 6:30 on the Aggie Sports Radio Network. Don't forget about the coaches show with the head football coach of North Carolina A&T, Vincent Brown, that's going to air on Tuesdays on the Aggie Sports Radio Network as well. And we tape that show, of course, on Monday over at the Student Union on the 3rd floor as part of the AAF or Aggie Athletic Foundation's lunch for members of the AAF. Again, A&T drops to 1-2 on the season, while Delaware moves to 2-0. Thank you to Dez back at the studios of the Aggie Sports Radio Network for all of his great work. For Al Swann and Billy Covington, Donal Ware saying so long for now from Truist Stadium on the campus of North Carolina A&T State University. Your final score, Delaware 42 and North Carolina A&T 13. You've been listening to Aggie Football on the Aggie Sports Radio Network.